Hi, my name is Jon Manker and I am the game designer of HIRÐ, the Viking-inspired board game.
And I'm Vesima Yannick, the manager of the HIRÐ Kickstarter campaign. What you will get when you back the project is a game that could have been found in a Viking grave and reproduced today.
Yes. And since I'm a passionate game designer as well as someone who loves Kickstarter, I thought I'm going to share some of the visions I had while I did this game. One of the first things that occurred to me was that I wanted to do a game that had very few spaces. I was sitting in a place called Nykvarn outside of Stockholm, thinking about things and saw some stones on the pavement, and then I came to think about how many spaces could there possibly be in a game and it's still interesting, and those were 8 stones. And so I started thinking about that, and it came a few game ideas out of it. And I was also sitting next to an old road, or a road that has been used for 5,000 or more years, because it's a road that goes between a very clean lake and the ocean. So probably Vikings has been walking along that road. And when I made the game, the first version of it, I had some ideas of that this should be a game where you have an Asian theme. It should be something Chinese that found its way to Sweden, or the Nordics. But quite soon I came to think about Vikings, and when I started thinking about Vikings as the theme for it, that stuck. Other parts of the game was iterated through many different roads, and I'm going to tell you a few of those meandering roads now. The first thing was that when I made the first prototype and started playing it with 8 spaces, and I only had 2 pawns, I had one which then became the piece called hɪrð, and I also had the king, then which now is called Löftungur, and those 2 made a game which was quite quick and quite a lot race game, and it was a race to the middle, and it didn't play out very interesting. So I added another space and another space, so I had 10 spaces in total, to have a starting space, to have something more to conquer around, and it made it a little bit more interesting. Still, it was too shallow in tactics, so what I did then was to add another piece instead of another square, another area on the board. So I had 3 different pieces, which was a boat, and inspired from the Viking theme, I thought a boat could be something good if they are kind of fighting. Of course they had boats. So then these boats also got the ability to accommodate or host some of the other pieces, the hɪrðs. And this really was one of the biggest design changes that made one of the leaps in design that made the game more interesting. I made the first real good looking prototypes and tried it with playtesters. At this point it was still too much of a race, so I added a square in the middle, so I got in a total of 11 spaces and felt that now it's kind of there, and since as few spaces as possible was the goal, well, I was kind of content. But there was still a little too fast paced in the middle, and then this was the second very good design choice I made, and that was to make the middle space diagonal, so instead of it being a space in the middle accessible from all spaces, there were diagonal lines which made it harder to move from one side to the other. It added 1 step. It actually made it 100% more steps, but that's just 1 step. So instead of 1 step to move from one side to the other, it took 2, and that made a huge difference. And so the middle board worked well. At this point, the gameplay was nice, but the strategy was a little bit too shallow, because this little change tended to make the game into a camping game instead of a race game. So people stack all their pieces in their own areas, and then it was very much stiff experience. So I then added the goal of conquering the 5 mill spaces, and that was the third very good addition. So you had then, up until then, the winning condition was to push the others löftungur off the board, but now it was also, you could also win by taking the 5 mill spaces, and that balanced the tactics in an excellent way. So now I made the first really good looking prototype and started playtesting it quite a lot, and from that on it has been some minor changes in gameplay. I have added things about how many boats you can have in each square, and also done a few things for changes the number of pieces. So instead of, from the beginning there were 30 hɪrðs, now it's only 15, because they are recycling in the game to a large extent. Unless they are outside of HIRÐs, you will have quite a lot of them anyways. And there are only 3 hɪrðs, which kind of is about making a minimalistic thing. How few pieces can you have also, but it was getting crowded on the board, and it was less interesting as a tactics. So the 2 design goals I had from the beginning was as few spaces as possible, and I really content with how this played out and what I ended up with. And the other design goal was to make a game that you could really believe was in a Viking grave, as Besimen said, and that through playtesting has shown to be the case. People believe this firmly, to the extent that I have to tell them that, okay, this is not a Viking game, it's something I came up with, because in the beginning I didn't tell them much about that. I just said this should be look like a Viking game, and they only heard that, and then they was kind of disappointed when I told them this is not a real game. But nowadays when I tell them it's my thing, they're generally happy from the start. During the preparation for the Kickstarter, I have made a lot of effort into find a way to make this game in a Viking look and feel also. So, and I have from different manufacturers been able to make this in cloth, and it's partly handmade, although it's in many it's in many numbers, but it's a handmade game to some extent, and it's wood and metal and cloth, and I really like that.
It is really a simple and beautiful game, and also beautiful and unique in its look and feel. Now we hope that you also will find this game interesting and nice in its format, and that you would like to add it to your collection. And it would be an honor for us to send it to you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.